right, all right. Aloha Friday, everybody. Thank you for being with me today. Today I have Justin Spears, good buddy of mine, fellow Navy veteran and local Central Florida guy. We're going to be talking about business, strategies, veterans on the cusp of Monday being Memorial Day. Definitely something that we want to highlight as well. But today we're going to be talking to Justin. Justin, thank you so much for being with me today, brother. I know that this is one we had to reschedule several times, but we finally made it.
We did, brother. I am happy to be on the show this morning.
Outstanding. Well, folks, you know, a lot of times what I try to do with Aloha Friday Live is get you different perspectives, specifically around leadership and how things affect leadership. Today, we're going to be talking about business, and this is a double header. So right after this hour, we're going to engage in another hour as we talk to one of my fellow Outlier Project members. But right now, we're going to see and dive into the aspect of business, being a veteran. How does that work? I know, Justin, a lot of us, when we separate from service, whether it's, you know, the end of a tour or medically or just simply retiring, the other side is different, right? The other side is different.
Very.
And so we try to kind of navigate those waters through different ways. Entrepreneurship is one of those ways. I know that you are, an entrepreneur as well as a business expert, the strategies. So before we get into all of that conversation, take a couple of minutes to tell us about you, and then we'll get into the business conversation.
Yeah, thanks, brother. Glad to be on the show again. Been a long time coming. So, yeah, very, very happy to be here and honored. But yeah, so here as an entrepreneur, talking business and stuff, that's my world. That's my passion. I'm a Navy veteran, served 09 to end of 14 there, attached to the Navy's Medical Operational Training Command. As a hospital corpsman aerospace medicine technician. Loved my job, loved what I did, and loved the experiences that I had. And, you know, it was kind of an eye opener, some of the experiences I had that led me to where I am now. You're talking about, what does it look like on the other side? It's kind of an abyss, but you pick up some good nuggets along the way. And, you have your support system, you have your expertise you learn in the military, and you kind of figure out what you're good at, what you enjoy. And so I found that my passion is really business strategy and growth. And a lot of that actually stemmed from the military, where I had an opportunity repeatedly actually to build new departments, do some expansions, learn a lot of operational efficiencies, organizational management, strategy, things like that. And that led me to where I am now, MXI Consulting, founder and CEO of a boutique consulting firm. We specialize in business growth and strategy models, where we really focus on unlocking your business's successes with customized solutions to drive growth and profitability within your business. So kind of our passion here is taking idea and turning it into actionable iteration or implementations. We want to see your vision create a sustainable reality, not only to, be a successful business, but to impact your family and impact your community as well.
And I appreciate your service and what you're doing now, because I know we've had quite a history. We met quite a bit ago through a mentorship program. And let me tell you, folks, if you are capable, right, and I'm going to say it that way because mentorship is just not for everybody, right? You have to know how to mentor folks. So if you're capable of mentoring and you're not mentoring, then you're taking away a key piece to the way this world flows, right? Mentorship is a way that not only do you build relationships, right? Justin and I, not only the fact that he was in the Navy, obviously instantly makes us, brothers forever, but the fact that he served and what he was seeking at the time, which was transition, right? How do I transition from here to there? I am not totally aware of the impact that this journey has had on him specifically, and he could tell you that. But I do know that from there, I've been able to see Justin go from, man, I'm getting out, don't know what to do, to being his own boss, right? And so witnessing that through the mentorship lens, the mentor lens, it's just an awesome privilege to be able to see that. And I tell him that now here publicly, right? Because I haven't shared that with him, but it's great to see that not everybody is lost post service. Yeah, there may be some, avenues you go and you try this and you try that, right? You went out, you went and worked for somebody, right? You went
Hmm.
to the
Yep.
school system. You was doing all of those things and then working for this company and then working for this company. And then all of a sudden you realize, hey, hold up, I got enough gold in my own cave to do something about it. And so let's talk a little bit about uh, that transition journey. And we'll kind of encapsulate it for the folks, but from the moment that we spoke through Veterati and you was getting ready to go, um, how did that journey go for you?
Yeah, yeah. So I remember our very first conversation, actually, which was very interesting. I reached out actually through Veterati. So I had just, I'd been out of the military for about 5 years at that point. I was medically retired. I had to get a few surgeries after I got out. So kind of laid low for a little bit while I was going through grad school, doing some rehabilitation. Started doing some consulting when I was in Northern California. Also took a director role at Simpson University, the founder of their Veteran Services Center and Veteran Services Program. So I did a big restructure of the campus, implemented this stuff, also built a K through 12 charter school there in Northern California. And so I was doing all this stuff trying to figure out like which industry, what did I want to do, and I didn't really know, but I knew I had these skills that I learned through the military and then through multiple graduate programs in business and leadership. And so we had already made our decision in summer of 2019 to move back to Florida and really love it down here, especially the Orlando area. I did a lot of work down here, went to school down in Miami, and I was like, all right, I'm a strategist. I got to put, pen to paper here of what I do. So let's put together a strategy. And that's where actually Veterati came in. I went on there, drilled down a very, very refined, very granular search of I'm looking for veterans who have access to jobs, who are connected, specifically in Orlando proper area, in tech and education. So I just kept going like lower and lower, and you were the first name that popped up, and I was like, I don't even know who this guy is, but I go on LinkedIn, I check him out. I was like, man, this is the guy to know. So he set up a call, and so here I am in California, connecting with you, connecting with Kevin Vazzari, and connecting with Baron Mills, the top three through Veterati. And really my pitch to my ask to you guys was hey, I'm looking to move out there, maybe probably looking for a job, but looking to get connected in an area where I don't really know anybody, kind of booming up from my post-military service here. What are we doing? And man, I mean, we just connected from the first call there, and we've had tons of great fun in our relationship, both in business and in personal. A lot of nonprofits we work with together. So it was from a strategist mindset of I'm going to a new area, I got to find my people, and both professionally and personally, and there's a good mix of the two now. So yeah, I was very glad that Veterati highlighted you to me.
No, and I'm glad that in your search you found me, right? You never
Yeah.
know how those things really are set up, but I am also happy that we were able to connect. As fellow servants of the Lord, I believe that these things are divinely appointed, and so you have to be able to answer that appropriately. But I'm glad that everything has worked out for you, and I know that we've all had several iterations of what a career looks like post service. It really is trial and error at times as to where we fit in. Now, trial and error led both to you and my right to entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
And I know that the reasons why I went this route, specifically in the leadership field, is that I saw a huge gap between leadership in the military and leadership outside of the military, mainly around real three topics: ethics, morality, and just caring for people, right? The heart of the heart-centered leadership. I saw those three things really missing, and so I said, you know what, I'm going to focus on is diving and bringing in this part to corporate America, all those that that need it. And so that's why I established Triad Leadership Solutions. What was your pinnacle in all the trajectory to go with MXI Consulting?
Yeah, so it was it really was it comes from that passion of I really wanted to help those that one have the courage to take on the amount of risk that's involved with stepping out and starting a business. It's very much like when you get out of the military, whether in my case, I was medically separated. Those that retire, those that choose not to renew contracts, when you get out, you got to have that the support system of subject matter experts. And so really that's where my heart behind it is. I want to be that support system for subject matter experts that are starting businesses, growing businesses. I want to take, the things that I've learned in the military, God-given gifts, things I've learned in academia, things I've learned through my network, things that I've implemented, failures, successes, and be there as a support system and a rock for those that are starting and scaling businesses. Yeah, so I mean that's what led me to MXI Consulting. Was I had built numerous departments, implemented programs, done regional expansions, capability expansions, started schools, did a lot in the tech and education space, and but I was doing it for other people, which I still do for other people, just in a different fashion. Now, rather than being kind of honed into one role or one job, one business for years at a time, it's now I can help a lot of people. And that was kind of the launching point in the reality of let's take MXI Consulting into a firm rather than an independent consultancy. Is I want to be able to scale and take on a variety of clients so that myself and my consultants that work for me, we can support a variety of businesses at the same time with that shared passion. And so that's where MXI Consulting came from. Was hey, let's do this with a new mind of business. Let's do this collaboratively, and let's touch as many businesses as we can to make a greater impact.
Well, that's wonderful to hear, brother. And I'm so proud of you because I am a witness of some of that trajectory, right? And you came into Orlando, you started fresh. You came from California, but you dove in. You dove in and you got connected, and I saw you here and I saw you there, and I said, "Oh, wow. He's gonna Justin's gonna rip up Orlando here." But it's so nice to see, and for those of you that are in a career transition, right? Whether it's military or you're, civilian, your next venture will be as good as your investment initially, right?
Mhm,
Because
mhm,
if you don't dive into some areas, especially in the networking space, in the connecting yourself to things space, right? There are some organizations that have already paved the way, right? If Justin had not got into Veterati, he'd have never found out because we wouldn't have been accessible. It was through
mhm.
that platform. So you have to dive into different areas and different things and use tools that are already there to your benefit. And so, whether you're military or civilian, any career transition will be as good or bad as your initial investment into that journey. So, consider that as you are taking these steps to go another route, and that's okay. You know, I've wow, since I've been out 9 years now, retired, I've had at least five different places that I've been at, right? Not to include Triad, but it is one of those journeys. Now, Justin, I know we've had conversations around leadership, and we've had some private conversations. Those will remain there, but there's been some other more conversations that could benefit those that are listening and viewing. In terms of leadership, what are the pains and aches that you have noticed, that have been consistent as you have taken this journey from military now to your own business ownership, that we can address? Because I know that the theme, now 9 years old, right, since I retired,
Mhm.
continues to be the same, at least in my perspective. And it seems like there's no change in sight sometimes when it comes to leadership.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. And yeah, we've talked about this a lot, especially give a little plug there because it was amazing going through your mentor leadership program there. So I really enjoyed that. I took a lot away from it, a lot of great nuggets. And it really highlights so much as we focus on leadership, especially, since getting out of the military and some of the voids, if you will, that we find of lack of employee centricity, lack of, I use the term employee equity a lot. As I'm consulting with businesses, I have an employee equity model that we build out that it's, the equity within a company, your social equity and your resource equity is in your employee base. And so, how do we value them? How do we have a new perspective on it so that we can see not just what do we want to do, but what can we do? What do we have the resources to? And it's really interesting when you start focusing on your, an employee-based leadership style, employee centricity, you start to learn, new areas that you can expand your business by giving people a lot of ownership of maybe an expansion, a new integration, things like that. Learning what people like to do rather than just what their job title is. And I think that there's an ethical responsibility behind that as well. Is we need to empower our workforce from a collaborative teaming approach here, and one of the issues that I run into a lot is there's a lot of authenticity issues in leadership of we can say one thing, but then how we implement it or how we see it implemented is very different. So when I do a lot of consulting, I have different assessments that I run through our executives that I work with, and then I also have assessments that I send to middle management. And the middle management ones remain anonymous because I want to get their valued feedback. I want to see both sides of how companies are running, things like that. So as we're focusing on building a company, we need to make sure that our foundation, which is our infrastructure, is core and it's in place. So we have a firm ground to build on. We don't want to build a foundation on sandy soil that could be eroded over time. So that's a lot of what I'm seeing in leadership, and I do my best to address it. That's a big part of the consulting program that we implement at small businesses is to address, culture issues, things like that. And it's really interesting because while I was actually in graduate school for my MBA, I was doing some work with a organizational behavior consultant. Ended up being one of my favorite classes in my MBA, and so I had the opportunity to be an adjunct professor of organizational behavior as well. And it really was, it's kind of a passion project for me, which was great, developing a curriculum and leading these business and communication students on understanding each other's value, understanding each other's, resources and passions from a teaming perspective of how can we kind of like catering is, move them all together at the same time for towards a collective goal, but relying on intrinsic capabilities of them.
Yeah, very great point. And I want dive into that a little more. I want to say hi to Lydia Chang and Raki for being with us on LinkedIn, and for all those that are joining us on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you for being with us. Now, you bring up a lot of great points there. I know that authenticity is a buzzword at times. Sometimes people don't even understand exactly what authenticity is.
So true.
But in the aspect of leadership, it's very important. It's very important that you, as a leader, understand yourself and your, capabilities and your limitations, in order for you to come back and tell somebody else about their proficiencies and inadequacies, right? And we don't need people to be perfect, but we definitely need them to be authentic.
Hmm.
And if you think you are, is one thing. Why don't you ask somebody? Right? Why don't you ask somebody how authentic you are? And then you really will find out, because people will either tell you because they love you, or they tell you because they've been waiting, right?
Yeah.
Waiting to tell you. Um, but either way, get that type of feedback on the leadership side, because it's one thing that we believe our own press, but people know, people know exactly what cloth you cut from and how you apply that. And so the best way to help yourself in the authenticity type of realm is to ask, hey, I happen to think that I'm pretty authentic. What do you say? And they'll say, no, oh, yeah, you are, or they'll say, "Mm, yeah, we know you think so." But, and
Right.
so those conversations really have to be had, because, um, over the last 9 years, I've either been under leadership that I had to pull chocks. And thankfully, I thank the DOD, and I thank the US Navy, and I thank the retirement system that I could do that at a moment's notice. But not everybody can, right? So when you have those challenges that you mentioned, and someone that can't, right? Someone that can't, um, it's going to take some strategy
Hmm.
to try to get around that. So, what would you tell somebody that is facing those type of leaders with the issues that were brought up, and just can't pull chocks, man? They have to, bite the bit and just plow through, in order for them to either get through that season or start to look to, for an exit, right? Every entrepreneur should have an exit strategy. So, what would be theirs?
Yeah, I mean, in the scenario where, somebody is kind of stuck in that loop of, they can't pull chocks yet, so they got to face the noise that's in front of them, and it's a less than desired atmosphere. I mean, one, you got a few things to assess internally. Is one, is this acceptable to remain in, or do I need an emergency exit? We, there's always solutions if you have to have an emergency exit. It's not the prettiest, it's a high risk, but I tell people, for your own sanity and sanctity, sometimes an emergency exit's needed, even if you don't have a backup plan. That's where you rely on your support system and your network. Now, if it is acceptable to stay there, but it's not the greatest situation, and you want to start either changing stuff or building your strategy to pull chocks and exit. I'm kind of a bullish person when it comes to this. I try and make things what I really want them to be, based off of what I believe. So I'm pretty headstrong in that. So I've started morale programs where it's like, hey, let's do potlucks. Hey, let's do, you know, lunch and learns, community, work movie nights, things like that. Or, we'll get together morale functions, or, get everybody together to go play pool during the day. Kind of just break up the day to day is one of the biggest strategies, that I try and get people to implement in that situation. Is if we can break up the day to day, get people focused and collaborating together, from different events, then volunteering together, things like that. it really starts to change the atmosphere quite a bit. And the hopes is leadership will see what you're doing, and hopefully you become the model of a changed behavior and changed atmosphere that, either they can start to adopt and see the value for, or they don't have a choice because everybody else is enjoying it and they're seeing some tangible fruit of what you're doing, or they remained very hardened to the situation, and you're just making yourself and your colleagues a better environment until you get out of there. So it's like trying to find ways to remain optimistic. Sometimes that's just getting away for a little bit, or bringing new things into the workplace. One of the big things that I work with companies on is a feedback loop. I learned it actually from the tech industry, from engineering, how they can have feedback loop for agile iterations, things like that of different products. But I bring that into the business world of having those regular feedback loops in a variety of different business operations is really key because it allows us to quickly evaluate what's going on and where we need to pivot. If it's working well, then let's invest in it. If it's not, hey, let's fail fast, let's pivot and launch something new or change it. Let's make, iteration 3 of whatever that is. And that could be product, service, or culture even. And so having those feedback loops in place is really key. And so, I urge people that are in those situations where, if they're not the executive leadership, but they're dealing with these things, aspire to really reach out, and ask, or start implementing feedback loops of, hey, how can we give feedback? How can we have town halls? How can we have community events? Things like that, and get those feedbacks into where feedback loops in. So one, your voice is heard in the company, and that could be, like I said, a benefit for your peers, or your next stream level management versus your executives. You don't always get top down buy-in, but you can do bottom up buy-in just by using social equity within a company. It almost forces executive leadership to take the blinders off and see, like, okay, someone's making some waves here and it's positive, and at that point it's like, it's almost foolish for them not to adopt and be part of it. And so, there's a couple strategies there to have some bottom up leadership within an organization as well.
Yeah, and I love that strategy. And folks, we could either throw the bath water out, right, which is an option, right, or we can infect the water while we're in it, right. And so a lot of people want to say, "No, I'm out the pool. I'm out. I'm gone." Hey, you know what? I've done it. I said I'm out this pool. There's plenty of ocean out there, right? So don't tempt a Navy person with getting out of the water, right? So, but in there are some situations that you just can't get out of the pool and just go. You can actually do something inside of that situation. And so thank you for sharing that, Justin, because a lot of people, they would love to just throw the bathwater out and just start with a new batch. But guess what? That water that you put in there is going to come with other stuff and you
Mhm.
just don't know it. Right. So sometimes it's good to know what you're dealing with and build a strategy around that than to get something new and not have any idea. And as you was talking, I was thinking Troy. I was thinking Troy in my head. Troy, you know, they did not take it, as far as I know, in the history book from the outside. They ain't try to run around it 7 times and hey, and shout and let the walls go down, right? That's not what they did. They knew that if they were going to do anything effective against this potential enemy, they had to go inside. And
Mhm.
sometimes you got to do it from the inside. And so thanks for bringing that up. Now, I know that you help a business grow, businesses grow from a company wide perspective, right? Holistically, right? You look at different things and you go through those parameters that you've identified for potential growth. What has been the biggest issue? I would say issue, but problem that you have seen with companies growing? Uh, it's one thing to have a product and sell it. That in itself, folks, is hard. I don't care who you are. It's hard to sell a product, um, and you have to do a lot around that. But what has been the biggest growth challenges for companies?
So I'll start with a broad term. And I do that because it covers a lot. The biggest issue I've found is lack of understanding strategy. You
Mm,
know, we in the last 10 years, especially the last 5 years surrounding COVID and now, we've seen this huge uptick, the greatest time in the history of our nation for entrepreneurship. More businesses than we've ever seen, annually are opening up. But what people don't see is how many are closing. Okay. There's a lot. The birth of solopreneurs, digitalpreneurs, SaaSpreneurs. Anybody can start a business. But what I'm seeing a lot of is, and very frequently, most of the clients I work with is they may have, a business idea. They may have a great product, and they're the subject matter expert or technician on that product, which is great, but they don't have a strategy. They don't have a sound business model. They don't have a strategic plan. They don't have a way to evaluate. They don't even know what KPIs are, key performance indicators. They don't understand what strategic initiatives are. So I'm a firm believer that everything you do in a business, you should be able to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, when you're doing it, how you're doing it, and evaluate it regularly. So that's what feedback loop comes in. And so companies they'll launch and they're just throwing everything at the wall, hoping something sticks. I'm not a fan of that at all, because then you don't, it's like if you have the same amount of ammo, but you have 15 firearms, you're shooting down range, but at some point you're going to run out of steam. Okay. But if you have two firearms and the same amount of ammo, you can really pack a punch. And so I like to focus on two, maybe three strategies, 2 years max on your strategic planning, but really know why you're doing something rather than I hope this works, I hope this works, I hope this works. We've got 20 things going. You get stuck in conversations, you get distracted really easily, and the byproduct of that is inefficiencies, distraction, communication issues, lack of organization and processes, things like that. Whereas, a sound strategy model includes standard operating procedures for every procedure in your workforce, every procedure in your company, from social media to product launches to development, things like that, to even, what your sales strategies are. Communication issues are rampant right now because everyone's just trying to make it work. But one of the things that I've had major success with over the years is we work from a strategic plan. So, but it's agile, it's iterative. Having those feedback loops mean, hey, every quarter we reevaluate. And in your startups, I tell people to reevaluate every month. Have a monthly strategic planning evaluation meeting where you're going through and it's like, okay, John's been doing this, Sally's been doing this. They're responsible for these areas, these initiatives. What's our feedback? Okay, we keep 2 months in a row, we're in the red. What's not working? Let's fail fast and pivot. But having those processes in place to pivot, so that way you have the ability to focus on the right things at the right time for either the right product or the right go to market or the right business area efficiencies. So a lot of what I really focus on is getting those, one, extracting what they're doing in a business, getting it on paper and actually building out these formulated plans. And even down to I'm very rigid when I come to implementation models. I have whoever's in charge of that initiative. I build an accountability matrix and I actually have them sign it. I want them to really take ownership of responsibility so that, it's not all on them, but they at least lead the way. And so having these efficiencies in place, your communication workflows mapped out, standard operating procedures, and knowing what you do in a company and why, it really makes it so anybody that you bring in can pick up the ball and run with it if you're ready to scale. But also, it becomes a new foundation for how you operate. You become very tactical in the market, and you can really gain market share pretty quick if you're one of the only people out there that's organized. There's such a lack of organization and entrepreneurship right now. And so, that I think that that's why we're seeing a huge closure rate of, the entrepreneurial efforts that we're seeing in the last 10 years. So, yeah, I think organization is one of the biggest ones right now. It really is.
And I tell you, the yeah, organization as a whole, and we're coming on one of the greatest technological advancement decades. I mean, AI. And we're going to talk about that because I know that you're just a great fan and user and exploiter of AI in business, and it's something that a lot of people, they're wary of. They're wary of it because I'll tell you. So my son just a couple of days ago, or maybe yesterday actually, he's telling me I can hear him, and he's talking to this thing. And he's like, "There's no way you could guess that." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "No, no, I'm talking to such and such, right?"
Yep.
And he goes, "I can't believe he guessed exactly what that was." I was like, "Well, what are you talking to?" He goes, "Oh, it's this program." I said, buddy, that's AI driven, right? So you are feeding that certain things, and so it's taking not only what you're saying, but what everybody else has said, and it's deducing the answer to
Mhm.
what normally would be, because it's learning how humans are thinking, right? It's learning. I said, so you actually are feeding it the answer through questioning, but you're thinking that it's actually doing it on its own. But when I said that, I stopped talking to him. But when I said that, I was like, holy smoke, what happens when it does do it by itself? And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, wait up, man. We are feeding this beast. And yes, I love it. I use it, you know, but it's going to be more and more and more use in the business world. So let's talk about AI and, number one, how you feel about it. And then number two, how are you using it in terms of making efficiencies, gaining ground faster because we can, and and anything else you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely a great topic. I'm very passionate about AI, and I relate it to not just because of the fascination of technology and the developments and innovation with it, because it's changing the internet. Which changed how our world operates. If you remember back to the dot-com boom and things like that, it's like what happened to all the businesses that were completely against the internet? They're gone. And so why is that? Well, they didn't adopt, they didn't stay up with the times, they didn't innovate. Um, and so what happened to their businesses? They failed because they didn't evolve. They didn't stay relevant. They didn't stay competitive. And that's the big thing is the nature of business is competitive. There's a moral way to do competition, but you also have to remain relevant to competitive landscapes. AI right now is breeding a lot of competition, but it's also allowing businesses to be very competitive when they know how to use it. So I focus on a term called emulation quite a bit. And I do this with a lot of the clients and the companies that I work with, is teaching them, how their 10 to 20 person small business can emulate a 100-person small business. It's how to use AI not just as this random thing you talk to, but building out enterprise models, building out a standard operating procedure. I have a program called HR.ai that I help implement into human resources programs at different companies. And what we do is we build on an enterprise model with a standard operating procedure where the new employees or all employees are checked out 3 to 4 bots. and they're trained and programmed for specific roles and tasks. Now you can either keep them as, conversational AI, where you have to tell them everything to do, or you can build out what are autonomous AI, so that they're on a program, they're on a schedule. Either way, they're still not completely independent of human in the loop behavior. So I believe firmly that all employees need to, especially company wide, all employees, everybody in the workforce needs to start understanding the concept that we're no longer employees. We're now subject matter experts and operators of AI. So we have our key knowledge, our key skills that fill a position and, support and our strategic resource for any company we work for or with. But also, one of the greatest measures of success in a lot of businesses is the number of employees. So, you know, if you have 20 employees, but you just created four bots for each of them, you just four extra workforce for minimal investment. So you can have them create reports, you can have them run analytics, you can have them draft content for you, things like that. You can use them as an education source and a training source. It's no different than we're seeing in academia. For both of my graduate programs, I had to do research, I had to bounce ideas off people. I, like you were saying with your son, I had to ask questions to learn answers. And so now it's ongoing training, so it's lifelong learning in your business, but it's also task efficiency with emulation. So you can emulate those companies that are substantially larger than yours, but in a model that now you can actually compete with them. And by being operationally efficient, having your infrastructure in place and your strategic plans in place, things like that, is now when you land those big contracts that are typically we see with your 100 plus employee companies, or somebody that's five times your size. Now you have the infrastructure and the workforce in place to execute, because you know what you're doing, how you're doing it, why you're doing it, and you have AI support along the way. So I don't believe anybody should ever lose a job to AI. I'm a firm believer that everybody should learn to become an operator of AI and understand logic engineering and the philosophy of how AI integrates into our daily life and into our workforce, yeah, as a force multiplier for what we do, not a replacement. So even my autonomous AI bots, I program them, I monitor them, I schedule them, but it's all based off of my knowledge. I have a knowledge repository of all the stuff that I've wrote, all the things that I've studied, all the books that I've written, shows I've been on, pretty much everything I've ever done, and that's where their knowledge base comes from. So they can help me in different areas. And so I highly encourage companies to start understanding this philosophy of, rather than you know being anti AI from a knowledge perspective, is start understanding is treat AI like a human in your workforce. So if you have a human manager, how can four AI roles support that person? Can they be more effective? Can you now be more tactical in, whether it's your bidding, your operational efficiencies, things like that, your overhead costs, so that emulation with AI now becomes your growth strategy. So we continue to grow companies and build jobs because we implemented AI as a resource within our business. So I firmly believe, you know, things like, hey, did you Google that? Like that's gone. Like that's already going away. We're seeing more and more people are using AI platforms rather than web browsers now. And that's going to continue to grow because it's more resourceful, it's more efficient. And so people need to understand that it's not going away, but we do have an ethical responsibility of how we use it. One, to keep jobs; two, to grow jobs; and three, to maintain our IP. And then there's all sorts of security practices that can go into place to make sure your stuff's secure. But I look at it from both the community impact and the business impact as much as possible to help grow both.
And I absolutely agree. And for those listening or viewing, how do you use AI? Are you using that as part of your business strategy? How are you employing it? Do you care about it or not? Or what's your worry about it? Because there's a lot of folks that are worried in some way, shape, or form. But I'd love to see those in the comments for those of you that are listening and viewing. Now, Justin, the other day, I went to Wendy's and, I gave my burger and I pulled up to the kiosk and I noticed that the voice was different. And I said, well, how can we help you? Boom, boom, boom. And but something sounded different. And I looked at my wife, I was like, and I ordered and boom, boom, boom. And I'm okay. Oh, but did I get that right? And I knew at that point that was not a human.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why, and I'll tell you two different things, right? Number one, I had complaints before. As I went to the kiosk and had an interchange with a person on the inside of the building, right? And I remember telling myself, if this person hates their job so much, why don't they just leave and then let somebody else come in here
Yeah.
and treat customers the way they should be treated?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of attitude. I mean, hey, if you don't like the place, that's not my fault. But let me get my lunch in peace. So that was one. But then on the other side, and it was obvious AI was part of that transaction that day. And I said, whoa. Well, I'm grateful there was no attitude, right? But at the same time, who did that replace inside?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're honest, that's our doing, right?
Right.
That's our doing. If everybody came through the drive-through and said, man, that was about the most pleasant Chick-fil-A experience I've ever had, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the only place I know that has never ever given me no attitude whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
But in any case, I started thinking about, okay, well, that function is no longer part of their job description
Mm-hmm.
because they couldn't handle it right. And if there was no need to replace that at that point where people were not complaining about the services they were getting at the kiosk, um then there wouldn't have been a need to change, but
Right.
we facilitated that.
Mm-hmm.
you know
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. Customer service, in-person customer service has been on decline for years. And so technology is seeking to replace that positive customer service experience. We're seeing it time and time again. And so, in those situations, when I said earlier, I don't believe anybody should ever lose their job to AI. I don't believe that one bit. If people lose their job to AI, there's two reasons. One, the business is managed very unethically, or two, the person isn't getting with the times, meaning they're not staying relevant on what their job is, their capabilities that they are supposed to possess for that job, or trends in society. In this case, yeah, we have a lot of people in customer service that are losing their jobs to AI. Why? Because we see a lot of bad attitudes. We see a lot of entitlement in the customer service industry, and it's easy to replace them with AI. You get higher Google reviews, you get a better quality, experience for your customers, which increases revenue. So if employees would learn how to use it, and employees would do their job of having positive customer services experiences, yeah, I'm happy to throw tons of money at you when I'm tipping, but if you can't get my Starbucks coffee more than room temperature, I'm gonna keep sending it back.
yeah, and that's so critical, and a lot of times some of these advancements were never made to replace people, but you make it difficult not to, right? Not
Hmm.
to use it in that capacity, because at the end of the day, business is for revenue.
Hmm.
Business is, yes, they solve an issue, a problem that's current, but they're in business for revenue. And if you affect that in any way, um, they will look for ways to ensure
Yeah.
that the revenue keeps coming. So yeah, one experience that kind of threw me, to the loop, because I have seen the onset of kiosks. McDonald's, right? I go to McDonald's. There's an option now. You can go to the kiosk, bypass every human, and just
Hmm.
get the bag from them, and you're gone.
Hmm.
I still like to go to the counter. Now I've used them both, but I like going to the counter, especially if I'm a frequent guy, because they were like, "Hey, how you doing?" Boom, boom, boom. The kiosk
Hmm.
doesn't do that, right? And so it depends on how you want your experience to go. Some people are just perfectly fine of just swiping the card and getting out of there. But the point is, AI is here. AI is filtering into many areas of our life. So that's not going to go away. It's just the way it is. How do we, as business owners, how do we, as educated people, how do we, as a workforce, look at ways of integrating what we bring to the table, what that brings to the table, because it does, and making it into a happy marriage where no one fails, right? No one
Hmm.
lacks. And so that's the point. Now I want to take the last 7 minutes or so to talk about you, Justin, MXI Consulting, brother. Give us the rundown. Where can people get to you, talk to you? How can they get your services and all that good jazz?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you see the background here, it's got my LinkedIn profile there. Also, I've got one of my services, my small business accelerator on there. But really, what we do at MXI Consulting is we unlock your business's successes. We create customized solutions to drive growth and profitability in your small to medium businesses. Our kind of sweet spot that we do a lot of work with, that we've really refined our processes with, is in the startup and scale up phase. So if you're looking to start a new business, reach out. If you're in that scale up of, hey, I'm looking to go from 1 million to 10 million this year, if you're looking to go, 10x your company, things like that, reach out. The scale up phase is very critical for building out a good strategy, building out an implementation model in your infrastructure to be able to execute, not just a scale plan, but also on the receipt of revenue and opportunities, whether it's product sales, contract or contract solicitation, awards, things like that. But be able to execute and keep your customers happy from an efficient standpoint. But also, a lot of our models are built around the holistic entrepreneurship mindset of, it's not about grinding all the time. It's getting the right things done, getting it done ahead of time, doing the proper planning so that you can have a high quality of life. You can spend time with your family. You can have those great hobbies. You can go to networking events. You can take a vacation and not be worried the entire time. So that's a lot of what we focus on at MXI, from product launches, inefficiencies in organizations, disorganized, lack of strategic partners, direction, things like that. Reach out to us. Website's www.mxiconsulting.com. And I also have our small business accelerator, a link up there as well, which is go.mxiconsulting.com/, small business accelerator. Feel free to reach out. We've also got a growth and grit newsletter that comes out bi-weekly on LinkedIn there as well, that you can subscribe to and learn more about different strategies. So there's different videos and things like that. I also have a number of ebooks that I've published, some different master's courses on strategy and executive leadership. So feel free to reach out. Absolutely. I'd love to connect with everybody.
Outstanding. Well, folks, all of the information will be part of the links. You can see it on the video. You can go to his LinkedIn profile. He has everything on there. Justin, it's been a great pleasure, brother, to finally have you on Aloha Friday Live. I know we see each other here and there, here in the local community and at our events. But it's been a pleasure, man, to see your trajectory from when we first started talking to now. So proud of you, brother, for what you're doing for yourself and your family, but what you're doing for the business landscape, because I'm telling you, folks, if you have a strategy issue in your business, Justin is the person to speak to. And so I encourage you to do that. If you're looking at this post live, hey, still reach out because he'll still be available. Justin, thank you, brother, for all that you're doing. God bless you, man. And, you know where I live, you know where I stay if you need anything. And folks, I want to remind everybody that we are on the hunt for 700 subscribers on our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube at DTLW Podcast, you'll be able to help us out there. It's just a click. It's not going to cost you anything. But what it does is activates a leadership book release, a launch. Every time I have somebody on the podcast and they're an author, I have them sign a book, send it to me, and then we'll send it to you. So every 100 milestone on YouTube, we make that available. And our last recipient of Humble Alpha, they love it, right? And so you'll love our next book, which is Identity Shift by Anthony Trucks. If you don't know Anthony, I don't know where you've been, but look him up because he is amazing. And he signed a book. He's got a book for you. As soon as we get to 700, I believe we're at 653. Only about 47 left to get us to that milestone. So please, we would love your support there. Also, we are streaming live on paradedeck.com. Follow us at 731. It is a military-centric creator platform where they stream live streams and podcasts and all kinds of stuff that are made from military creators, veterans, military spouse, and military members. So thank you, Parade Deck, for hosting us on your site. Folks, we are getting ready for our next guest, and we'll be talking with him here soon. But if you're leaving us now, Justin, thank you, brother. And we'll see each other here following on. So I'll stay on the air, and I'll let Justin go on and have his Aloha Friday. Brother, God bless.
Thanks, brother. Blessings, man. Such an honor.
All right, folks. So we're going to keep on this show because we're waiting on Gideon. Now, Gideon is a fellow Outlier Project with me, a member, and I'm going to bring him in here because he is not, hey, my brother, he is not only a fellow outlier, but he is a Gig'em, right? Texas A&M. He's, right. I tell you, man, I when I saw that the Outlier Project was sponsoring his journey, right, on the Mongol Derby, and that he was an Aggie, I said, oh, hold on now. That's double whammy. Gideon, brother, thank you for being with us today on this Aloha Friday Live. I'm excited to not only get your story out to the public, but to support you in any way that we can. And I'm sure that you'll have some of that information. But before we get into all of your journey and what you're doing, share a little bit about you, and then we'll get into today's conversation.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Super excited to be here and be able to share the story with all of you guys. So my name is Gideon Kotkowski, and I guess relevant to the Mongol Derby and the experience, I always start by saying, I'm from the border. I'm born and raised in El Paso, Texas. Both sides of the border, raised in the desert, and eventually, started, went to Texas A&M. I played polo there. Actually won a couple national championships. Shout out to Texas A&M and anyone who went there as well. But from there, I joined a couple startups, saw them grow, saw them fall, and at the end of the day, I'm just excited to be able to share my passion with you all and be able to talk to the Mongol Derby and maybe a little bit of the professional experience, of course. So, no, super, super excited, and thanks for having me.
No, and it's my pleasure, brother. You know, we have to support each other in any way that we can. And so I'm going to throw this out here, right? Bam! All of y'all
There you
that
go.
that don't know, you need to know. But you started in a place in America, right? A lot of dirt out there. A lot of dirt out there. How'd you get into polo, right? Because I mean, unless you're doing it on the dirt, that's a different thing. But how did you get into that? I know you have a love of horses. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Yeah, what piqued your interest in as you went into A&M?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. What a good question. So I actually started horseback riding when I was like, I don't know, 8, 7, 8, something like that. My dad and my mom were big avid horse people. And my dad especially was the one who really got me into it and wanted me to just give it a go, right? And I don't know if anyone listening or anyone watching is a horse person, but if you are, you know that when you get bit by the horse bug or the horse virus, you're instantly addicted, right? And so that's kind of what happened to me. I started horseback riding 7, 8 years old. My dad put me on bareback on this big old paint. I remember him. I remember him perfectly. I don't remember. His name was Ghost, but in Spanish it was Fantasma. And he put me on this horse and said, if you're gonna learn, you got to learn from the fundamentals. You got to learn the basics, and that's always bareback, right? That's the best way to start. And I recommend anyone who's going to be a horse person or who's thinking about horseback riding to go ahead and give bareback a try. But that's how it all started. I started riding there at this little barn out in by a little bit outside of El Paso, in Canutillo is technically the town name. And then I just fell in love with horses. I fell in love with all of the aspects of it. It takes a lot of work to get on a horse. You have to clean you have to tack, you have to clean the stall, you have to make sure that the horse is ready, you have to brush them, there's so much work that goes into it. And then once you get on it, it's like the best feeling ever, right? There's nothing closer to the feeling of freedom than being on top of a horse and going full, flat out, right? Like going as fast as you can. And polo, I picked up by accident. Actually, I was wanting to get back into horseback riding. It took summer. I would ride in the summers, and then I would do school in summers and whatever. And then high school came around, and I got kicked out of the cross country team because I wouldn't show up to meets because I didn't like running at the time. And my mom got really mad at me and said, if you're gonna not show up to meets and you're not gonna do cross country, you have to do something. You have to be active, right? Maybe I had a little too much energy. And so she put me back into these horseback riding lessons, and just happened to be at a polo ranch in town. And as soon as I picked up the mallet, it actually wasn't a love at first sight. I picked it up and I was really, really bad. It sucked. And then eventually about 3 to 4 months in, I finally hit the ball. You hit it, it goes right. It's like hitting a home run on a bat, that little sound that you hear. And from there, I fell in love. I got addicted. I started practicing a lot more. I started working in exchange for lessons at the barn in the summers. And eventually that took me to a place where I could get recruited to play at Texas A&M. And, I played there for 4 years and won the national championship in 2018 as a captain. So that's been the journey so far, at least.
I tell you, I'm over here smiling ear to ear, right? Because I'm saying, oh, I found it by accident, and oh, by the way, I'm a champion.
So, hey, anybody can do it. You just gotta.
Right, yeah. If anybody can do it, they would. But it calls to this, and I love throwing this out because regardless of people believe it or not, there's a divine calling to our life, man. And there's just things that only we can do. I mean, that's why we're individuals. And so when people out there are trying to mimic others, what they're doing is they're forfeiting that God-given and calling to their life. And when you would have said, okay, well, it was by mistake. Cross country. Where? In El Paso? I would have quit, right?
Yeah, you can see why I didn't like going, right?
I was doing cross country up in New York, right, in the Bronx, a whole lot more milder climate. We got it, so it wasn't that bad. In the summer, it was hot, but it's not El Paso hot. So yeah, I could see where some of that challenge would arise. But how funny that it is that you would try your hand at this. Your mom was like, "Hey, you got to do something, brother." And that you would pick this up akin to something you already loved. So, I mean, that possibility could have been there all along, but you had to kind of, I'm not going to say fail, but you had to attempt at this and not really, succeed all that much in order to then attempt this where, you call it by accident or whatever. Now you're a champ. And so for those listening, because I love talking about leadership, right? So for those listening, not everything that you're going to attempt is going to be, the Holy Grail. It's not. But you have to kind of look at the bridge between your attempt, what you love and have passion for, and then give that a try. And so I'm glad that, your mom egged you on. Look at Aggie. Yeah, I'm going to throw that. Egged you on to get into this polo thing because, man, from not so good to, champ is a long way. So take us through that life, man, because from hardly ever hitting the ball to hitting it. And I love that you mentioned baseball. I understand what that sounds like. You can hit a ball on a bat 1,000 times. And if you hit it on any part of that bat, it's going to do something. But there's this, what we call sweet spot, that you hit that ball with that bat on that spot, and it's going to go a long way. So take us from that moment, right, where you swung it and it just made that sound to, getting to champ. That's not an easy thing.
Yeah, and you know what? Like the story maybe is a little bit blurry at this point for me, but I'll say this: when I first started playing polo, it was really difficult, and honestly, what a metaphor for life, right? Like anything you're gonna try to attempt is gonna be hard at first, and it wasn't anything that I wasn't unfamiliar with, right? Like I had the horseback riding down, and that was a big part of it. But as I kept getting a little bit better, as I kept getting more practices in, as I started getting a little bit better horses under me as well, things started to change, and I started hitting the ball a little bit more, and I started, being a better player on the team, and I started getting called up for different schools and things like this to come out and play with them. And so I noticed early on I had a real passion for it because all I wanted to do was go out there, right? It wasn't even a question for me if it was between homework and getting on top of a horse for a couple hours, like, that I was going to try to do that homework in the morning. So, that's where it started. I was in high school. I started horseback riding early, but I started playing polo in high school, and I saw the opportunity to go play at a school. And so I took it a little bit seriously. And then when I joined Texas A&M, and I'll be honest with everyone here, like my first 2 years, I was on the bench. I thought I was better than what the college players were, but I showed up and they were good. Everybody that I was playing with was good. And so the first couple of years I sat on the bench, I practiced with the team. We actually won a national championship in 2016 as well, but I didn't play in that one. And I still am happy and proud that we won that. I was part of the team, right? They practiced against me and whatnot, but that was a big part for me that really inspired like the extra work going into my junior year, where I was starting to see the opportunity to be captain my senior year, and going into the barn first, leaving last. Those just basic stuff, right? That you need to do in order to really, how would I put it? Like in order for you to really own that leadership, right? In order to be a leader, you have to act like one too, right? And so from my perspective, that's kind of how it all started. It was the journey was a little bit perhaps you know, what is this called? Like when you go left and then you go right and then you go left,
Yeah,
a little
meanders.
zigzag,
Yeah.
meandered. But eventually, made it to Texas A&M, and I started playing, and it went well. So from there, I mean, horses and polo have opened my life. It's a relatively small community, and any city that I go to, I can just walk up and say, hey, like I used to play at A&M, I play now in St. Louis, I play now at wherever I'm playing, and the doors open wide. The doors open wide because of that. So I guess to answer your question, it wasn't as straightforward as I'd expected. But at the end of the day, like the butterfly effect, right? I quit cross country. I got into horseback riding. Found my passion, found my niche. It was a competitive sport, but also team oriented. And so there was a lot of things that were going my way, and I'm really grateful for all that.
Yeah, no, and I love that because it really shows that it doesn't really matter the field that you're in. You're gonna see that zigzag, right? I came from a military environment, right? So spent 26 years in the military. Then I had to come out here and do that zigzag right at 40 plus, and try to find my role in this big old world now. And so it's never straight, right? If it was straight, oh my goodness, everybody be happy. But it's never straight. But what I love about that zigzag is that it actually opens up your life to the view, right? That zigzag takes you places that you normally would not go. And you have to have your eyes open because that journey is wonderful, although maybe not appreciated at the time, right? Not appreciated, but the things that happen in those zigzag moments is really what catapults you or prepares you. You mentioned something that I love, right? Showing up early, leaving last, right? And those are things and attributes that we not only want to see, right? I can care less if I see you in the morning or see you leaving last if you're doing nothing, right? If you're not doing nothing. But if you're taking those moments to inspire, uh, furthering someone's career or inspire attaining a future role, right? I know that the captain that came after you must have saw something in you to continue that going on, right? And you must have saw somebody when before you was in the captain seat to that say, oh man, okay, so that's what you got to do, that's how you got to be. And so wonderful that you had those zigzags and got you to that. Now you mentioned playing out, post college, and obviously a championship collegiate career is something to laud, to praise. And so congratulations on that
Thank
and
you.
those years that you spent at A&M as a champ. Your journey now, is that a freelance? How is that? You part of teams? How does that play out now that you're out of college?
Yeah, and just to backtrack a little bit, Enrique, just because I think it's important to note, like a big um, like assumption on leadership from my perspective is doing the work that your team doesn't want to do. And what you mentioned, leaving early and coming late doesn't matter if you don't do anything, but it does when you do the things that your teammates or the people you're leading don't want to do. Right. In my case, it was bringing the horses into their stalls from the pasture is such a pain in the butt. I would show up early, bring them in, and when my team got there, all they needed to do was tack, right? And I think enabling your team, enabling the people you're leading to show up and just do their job and do it the best of their abilities, while you, as the captain or as the leader or the manager of your team, can kind of enable that, right? By taking away bottlenecks, by taking away pain points. That's right there the money, right? And so to kind of round out your question, there it was the idea behind playing polo outside of college isn't necessarily something that I envisioned. I know that the lifestyle that I want has polo included, but the reality is, if you're willing to put in the work, then people are willing to open the doors for you. And when it comes to horses, and this goes out to anyone who is maybe afraid to horseback riders, maybe not thinks that it might be too expensive for them to horseback ride, etc. I think the big lesson here is go out and say you're willing to help. That's what I did. When I moved to St. Louis, the first thing I did was like, hey, I noticed there's a couple games coming in September. Like, would love to help wherever you can, right? Help do the things that others don't want to do. So in polo, oftentimes like goal scoring or timekeeping, these little things that you need to do outside of the game that are kind of a pain for anyone to do. Well, I would join and I would volunteer and do that. And eventually, you're like, oh, well, do you play? Oh, do you ride? Whatever. And it's like, yeah, I do. Blah, blah, blah. And then they put you on a horse, and if you can hold your own and protect the horse, then you've got a solid gig there. And so how to horseback ride, the secret of how to horseback ride without paying that much money is to go out to your lesson barn, go out to the barn that you're riding at, go out to a friend's barn or whatnot, and just say, hey, like, I'll muck the stalls if you let me ride a horse. So that trade is done a million times over, right? Like, I'll do that still today. If I'm traveling for a week and I see that there's a couple horses, I'd knock on the door and say, hey, like, can I muck your stalls and ride your horses for a little bit, And most of the time, folks are open or receptive to it. So I think that's the key to horseback riding outside of college or outside of a organization, is to just offer yourself help, offer yourself as a volunteer in exchange for a couple minutes or hours on a couple horses. So I think that's the way to do it.
Absolutely. I love that, because I'm one that is a proponent for what I call in-kind services, right? So, I have a skill, I can apply it to you. You have an availability or you have a resource that you can apply to me. And truly, folks, that's how the world turns, man. And it was that way early, right? We didn't have technology at one time. It was service for service, and you could do that. And so it's still alive and well today because I use it myself, right? I have a coaching business. There's a young person that wants to do something. They have a skill that I need, and I coach them, and they provide the skill. And you could do that. And so thank you for sharing that. And definitely thank you for sharing the part of putting in the work as a leader, right? Because yes, and it is what they see that inspires them. So if you're able to do that inspiration through your labor, through your work, more power to you, because you've gained a whole lot more ground than most people can. Now, Gideon, you have this derby. I looked at this thing and I'm like, this brother's crazy. What? How many miles? I'm like, good Lord.
A lot of miles.
I know. So how did you find out about this?
Yeah. So actually, again, as the story goes, never as straightforward as you'd think, but I was actually just scrolling Instagram one day. I was like, 2018 or something like that. I had just graduated. I was just scrolling, as one does. And I something came up on my For You page, how the algorithm does its thing. And it was about horses in Mongolia. And I clicked into it. Turns out it was the Mongol Derby. And I was like, wow, what an experience this is going to be for for these folks that are racing in it this year. Amazing stuff, right? You're riding 650 miles, basically the same distance as going from El Paso to Austin on horseback over the course of 10 days. Or, if you're in California, maybe San Diego to SF is a better gauge of how long this horseback riding race is. And so I just kept up with it, and eventually put it on my bucket list, list of things that I wanted to accomplish. It seems like one of the most horsemanship challenges in the world, right? It's the longest, toughest horse race in the world, according to Ripley's Believe It or Not. So it's official. And the idea behind it is, you ride on these Mongol ponies that are effectively the the descendants of the horses that Genghis Khan rode when they were for lack of a better word, conquering the world, right? The Mongolians really connected east and west, built out the Silk Road as a form of trade to bring things from Europe over to Asia. And so there's a lot of history, there's a lot of culture, and there's a lot of a culture behind the horse in Mongolia. And so as a horse person, that horses are they were originated from Mongolia. Mongolia is like the mecca of horses and horsemanship. And so what I did, I was like looking, I was scrolling, I put it on my list. I eventually printed off 3 pictures, 3 of my favorite pictures that I found on Instagram. I sent them out to, I reached out to someone who went, they sent me the Google pictures. I printed them out and I put them in my bedroom. And this was 2019. I was making like, I don't know, 40K, 35K coming out of college. I couldn't afford going to Mongolia at the time, but I knew that I would want to. And I knew that if I just like visualized it and if I could just see it every day, then one day I would be able to do it. So I printed these pictures out, put them in front of my bed. First thing I saw when I woke up, first thing I saw when I went to sleep. And, lo and behold, 3 years later, I was working at the startup, got a good raise, decided that it was time for me to put some money behind it and try to do this and follow my dream, follow my passion of horseback riding, and especially across the Mongolian steppe, where so much history has taken place and there's so much to learn when it comes to horsemanship. And so that's what I did. I found it on Instagram, fell in love with it, visualized it every single day for 3 years, and eventually decided that it was time for me to put up the money and put up the time and resources and send it. And so that's kind of the story there. I think anyone can do it, and honestly, it's a lesson in really, I hate to say it, it sounds so hippie sometimes, but like manifesting your dreams, right? I think it's when you think about it, when you put it out in the world, eventually the world comes back and lets you do it. So I'm pumped. I'm stoked for this, and obviously this is one of the topics, Enrique. You can ask me just one question about, I can keep yapping about for the rest of the hour. So be careful what you wish for here.
No, I love it because you mentioned a couple of things there that I really love. So vision boards. I'm also a proponent for vision boards, because sometimes we just don't know until we see it, right? Sometimes it's just a dream, a passing thought, until we put eyes on it. And it's such a powerful thing. When you have, for those listening, viewing, if you have a dream, if you have a desire for something in the future, put it in front of you. Let it become part of your life. If it's not next week, if it's not next year, if it's not the next decade, that's besides the point. It has to be part of your life. And having it part of your life is by putting it in front of you. First thing you see. So I'll tell you, I love God. I love God, and that's just it. First thing I see is my Bible. The last thing I see is my Bible, right? And so whatever it is that you have a passion for and that you want in your life, it has to be the first thing you see. It has to be the last thing you see, because it starts to take, it's almost like it becomes part of your DNA, man. It's just starts to pull and tug at you, and now you start thinking about it, and now you're doing things that are incongruent with that thing that is in front of you. And so before you know it, you are allocating resources and time and energy to that. And you said, I chanced on it on Instagram. I think it chanced on you. It was like, hey, you gonna stop scrolling? Because there's just some things that only we can do, and many people may be able to. I know I can't. I'm not riding a horse down the street. So I'm definitely not ready to take, all those miles. And you said, San Diego to San Francisco. I was like, that's a long way, bro. And so a vision board being one of those key things that I encourage people to partake in. Doesn't have to be this huge board. A couple of pictures, right? You said 3. Give me 3 pictures, right? And it makes an impact. It makes an impact on who you are, what you're capable of doing, and the actual activity. And and a little bit about dedicating resources, right? Sometimes we're not going to get sponsors, and we're going to be talking about sponsorship here in a little bit. We're not going to get sponsors right off the bat. I did my podcast for 4 years before I ever saw somebody say, hey, I'd like to sponsor you, right? And now the thing is coming in. All right, good. But it took time. It took effort. And it took me investing first into something. Ask any business investor if they won't desire to see that company, all right, you was part of a startup. I have been part of a startup. Any investor will ask how much you put into it.
Yeah.
Any. And so any person that is in a position to provide some services or sponsor, how much have you put into it? And if you can say, I'm looking for you to do it, you're going to be, you're going to be asking again. Let's just say that. So I love that you shared that, because that's very important. What you see and how you see it and how you accept it and how much you're willing to put into it from your own skin, right? Your sweat of the brow and all that stuff. And I know that as a young man growing up in El Paso, sweat of the brow, not just, because of the heat, but because that's the way of life. You got to put some work into something that you really want. You did it from, being at home. You did it from in school. And now you're doing it to get you to this place called the Mongol Derby. Lord bless you. And so the Outlier Project. Let's talk about the Outlier Project. How you got it involved, and the wonderful news of our group, our community, sponsoring this event, which I am just, plumb happy of, not only as an Aggie, but also as a person that is part of the Outlier group, and seeing you get to this event and succeed once again. So, how did you get with the Outlier group? We'll talk about here in a bit.
Yeah, of course. The Outlier group, the Outlier Project is a, it's a community of people who think differently. That's the way I always describe it. If you've ever been told that you think a little different, or you dare to be a little different, than the Outlier Project is a community that celebrates and helps you achieve the extraordinary, right? Our mission as the Outlier Project is that everyone in the world can be ordinary, but we all have the power to choose to be extraordinary. And when I first met Scott, I was actually working at a startup as the head of talent. Alongside Scott, he has a company called Something New, which helps startups recruit sales talent specifically. And so I actually met Scott through a working relationship and connected immediately. I always found him to be kind of a mentor to me, and I always reached out to him when I had questions about talent. I was just a young buck with my basically second job out of college, leading a startup with $50 million of funding and their entire talent recruiting and talent strategy, right? And so it was a big job, and Scott always helped me out and was always there for me, even as a mentor. And so, long story short, kept in touch with Scott for a while, past my job at Balto, which is where I met him, and would always just keep up with him and update him on my life every few months, and he'd update me on his. And then eventually I was riding a horse, and I was thinking, and this is after you're talking about putting in work, Enrique, I sent probably over probably thousands of emails, hundreds personalized, and trying to get a sponsor for the Mongol Derby. And it wasn't until I was just riding a horse in actually it was in Denver, Colorado, but I was just riding a horse and thinking about who would be the perfect sponsor for this, and what's something that I could do to reach out. And I just picked up my phone and sent a video selfie to Scott, and I was just on the phone thinking to myself, maybe one day, maybe I can get Scott to bite. So I sent him a call, and I was on the horse, and I was like, hey man, like I'm riding in this crazy thing. It's called the Mongol Derby, 1,000 kilometers, over 650 miles, over the course of 10 days. And I'm looking for sponsors to join me on this journey. I don't want to ask for favors. I want to add value. I think that's something really important, right? I could have very easily done a GoFundMe. I could have very easily asked friends and family to support, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be sure that I wasn't asking for favors, but I was adding value. And Scott understood that, and it clicked. And the more and more we talked about it, the more it fit, right? I'm just an ordinary dude. I'm not a millionaire. I don't have a crazy job title. I don't, I'm just another guy, and just another guy that apparently chose to be extraordinary, at least for 10 days, right? And so all that combined really brings out the narrative that the Outlier Project is for anyone who's looking for a bump in leadership, who's looking to bump shoulders with folks who are leaders in the industry, who's looking for an opportunity to meet folks who are also as ambitious, who also think a little differently, who won't look at you and say, Mongol Derby, bro, don't do that. That's not safe. You're going to Mongolia. That's in between Russia and China, right? Yeah. Well, isn't it scary to go out there? It's like maybe a little bit, but it's not going to stop me. So hanging out with folks who encourage you, hanging out with folks who support you, who you can lean on for advice, who you can lean on for industry help or outside of industry help. Enrique and I met through the Outlier Project, and look at me now, right? I'm on the Aloha Friday Live. So anything can happen, but that's a little bit about the Outlier Project.
No, I love it, and you put it well, and I know that Scott is going to be proud of that descriptor of the Outlier Project, folks. If you don't know the Outlier Project, it is a membership organization, and the Outlier Project, you can find them on LinkedIn. Just look for them, or you can click on the link there with Scott McGregor's profile. But we're looking for new members. Come on in. We welcome all of you that are willing to branch out and become extraordinary. And we all have the capacity to do so, but sometimes we need community. And I love the Outlier Project. Just to let everybody know, Developing the Leader Within podcast is sponsored by the Outlier Project. We are fortunate to have both, Gideon and I, Scott in our life, right? It's just one of those things. And Scott has been a blessing to a countless amount of people. And we see that week in, week out. So it's not something that we talk about authenticity in the prior segment of Aloha Friday Live. That gentleman right there, that brother, is about as authentic as you're going to get him. And we are both blessed to share life knowing him. So Gideon, you have this derby. Tell us about the intricacies of that, because we're not talking the same type of horse, right? Right, and we're not taking the one that you rode when you was a kid, polo. That this is a different type of horse. That journey, take us through that whole evolution of the Derby, because you mentioned the safety concerns regionally. Okay, but they hold their own, right? They know, and that place has been a part and been existing for way more than the United States have been, right? So take us through that journey of the Derby.
Yeah, so the way the Derby works effectively is, you show up to Mongolia, and they take you out for a little pre-race training where they teach you the intricacies of riding Mongolian horses. And when I say Mongolian horses, I'm talking about basically feral, semi-wild ponies that are used for work sometimes, and other times they're just roaming around in big old pasture land. If you think of the Mongolian steppe as kind of like the Great Plains before it was cities and stuff like this here in the U.S., that's kind of what it is, right? It's just like giant land mass. Actually, Mongolia is the largest country with the smallest population in the world. So I think there's only like 2 or 3 million people in the equivalent of like the entire Western US when it comes to size, right? So you're riding these semi-wild ponies that are smaller than usual. Most Mongolian ponies are known for their endurance and for their size. So these little ponies could go for like hundreds of miles a day if they needed to. And they're small. They're like 13, 14 hands, tiny little ponies who not used to getting ridden, right? Maybe once a year when they're used for the Mongolian Derby, the next year is when they get ridden, and that's the only time. So the more about the intricacies in the Mongolian Derby, like it was the Mongol Derby is the nerve system of the largest empire in human history, the Mongol Empire back at its time. And at its height, Genghis Khan's mighty horse messenger system is what they call it, connected half the planet. So when I was talking earlier about Europe to Asia, this is the horse messenger system that Genghis Khan developed to keep the villages united and keep the Mongolian Empire united. And for a decade, the company that puts on the Mongol Derby, called the Equestrianists, have been rebuilding this ancient network to stage the world's greatest horse race ever. So what happens? Us riders, we score up to 1,000 kilometers of Mongolian steppe. We change horses every 40 kilometers. So speaking in English here, we ride over 650 miles, change horses about every 20 miles, and navigate and survive on our own. They give us GPS training at the beginning, and they kind of point us in the right direction. But at the end of the day, it's just rider and his horse versus the wild, just kind of like the old days. And there's a lot of like little fun facts that I guess I can call out. Is not everyone who competes finishes the race. There's a lot of athletes that either get hurt or get sick, or you're riding on top of a horse, and horses have a brain and they can do whatever they want at the end of the day. There's over 1,500 horses involved in the Mongol Derby. Everybody rides a different horse every 20-25 miles when you change. You're supposed to, in order for the race to count, in order for you to finish, you have to finish in under 10 days. Some folks they time out and they don't get they're not official finishers. You have a 10-pound backpack weight limit, and you're riding like 8 to 10 hours a day for 10 days at least, right? So quite the experience with quite the history and also lots of danger involved. I think horseback riding is like top 3 in most dangerous sports in the world. I think the first one is cheerleading, so I don't know how crazy that is, but regardless, really stoked, and again, like really thankful for the herders and the Mongolian people who let us borrow those horses for this race, because without them it wouldn't be possible.
Right. No, it takes a community indeed. And look, I'm listening to the stats and I'm listening to the journey, and I'm like, whoa, how do you in the States prepare for something like that?
I'm training for a marathon. That's how I'm thinking about it. I'm training for a marathon. I'm throwing in some weight training in there as well. But the most important thing I could do, is just get on top of a horse and figure out my gear. I think, outside of just being fit and being able to run a, sub-4 marathon, which is kind of what I'm thinking would be good training for this, because it's an endurance race. So you have to prepare for endurance. I'm also thinking, how am I going to prep my gear so that I don't get blisters, so that I don't get caught off guard, so that I have everything I need when I need it, packed perfectly, right? And so that's another big thing. A big part of the puzzle there is trying to get your gear in order and trying to get it in a way where it's, under 10 pounds and you can right into the wild with it, right? So that's kind of how I'm preparing. I don't know if there's a right way or a wrong way to prepare. Well, I can certainly say that not preparing is the wrong way to prepare, but ultimately, there's no playbook for something like this. It's a one of a kind race, and it's a one of a kind experience. So I'm just going to try my best.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering if anybody listening or viewing this has anyone in their network that knows how to pack for some long journey, right? And I know there are plenty of SEALs that are part of my network. They, Rangers, all that stuff, and they know how to pack for a long journey. And so maybe one of them will chime in and give you some pointers there. That would be great. Or anyone that you may know, the listener or viewer, that can do something like that. Guy Gideon and packing light, but packing right. Oh man, we got to
Right.
put that on a T-shirt.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
But yeah, so it's amazing how this journey will play out for you. But I do know that the Outlier Project, and you have another sponsor on there as well. I don't mind you mentioning them and give them some praise, because people are worthy of praise when they need it. But if you don't mind sharing about
Yeah,
that.
of course.
Yeah.
So the Outlier Project is my official sponsor. I'll be wearing a jersey with their logo on it and their colors. But on the back of the jersey, I'm also sponsored by a company called Build It. It's BUILD it. Website is joinbuildit.com. And what Build It does is we hire Latin American talent for U.S. companies, specifically in Mexico. So Mexican tech talent. They specialize in software engineers, data scientists, and product designers, where you can take out the middleman, find a talented engineer, data scientist, or product designer in Mexico to aid in your startup or in your company at a more cost-effective rate. So the idea being, we take out the middleman. You're not paying any sort of like a monthly fee or whatnot. You pay direct to the employee that you're hiring. It's a full-time employee experience. They feel like they're working full-time on the product. They get equity in the business or whatever. However you set up your benefits, and Build It facilitates that connection. So they recruit, they source, and they are the employer of record for that employee. But you manage and you pay them directly. So it is your employee. We just help you facilitate that. And Build It is a great company if you're looking to scale profitably and quickly. So if that's something that you're doing, or if that's something that interests you, feel free to DM me on LinkedIn, and happy to share more about how Build It helps you hire effectively in Mexico.
Outstanding. And I love that, because hey, I'm a world-minded leader. So any talent is everywhere. It's not just resides here in the US. The talent is everywhere. And there are some talented people out in the world waiting to help you grow your business. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for giving them that spot. Now, Gideon, when it comes time to go and prepare for this thing and get out there, how can someone cheer you on? How can someone support you? Maybe there's somebody else out there that would like to support your journey. Maybe some dry fruit company. Anybody listening? Somebody, Band-Aid. Can we get some of that? There are other people with other resources that could help. How can they do it? Where would you want them to go for that assistance?
Yeah, totally. As far as like sponsors go on the jersey, I think I'm pretty full on logos I can put on there. Maybe we can squeeze in one more if you're nice to me. But definitely looking for product, or stuff like that, where like energy bars, or if you've heard of Honey Stinger, something like that would be super helpful. But I think the best way to join me on this journey, if you're looking to support, is by and I'll plug this with Enrique later, but I do have I'm fundraising for a local Mongolian nonprofit called Step and Hoof. And Step and Hoof is a organization with the goal of saving the unique traditions that are part of the nomadic Mongolian lifestyle. They give the herders the modern tools and knowledge they need to keep their livestock healthy and productive, right? So a big part of this race is done by the herders that Step and Hoof supports. And, you know, if you've ever met someone who does the New York Marathon or, you know, one of those big events, they're always raising money for a nonprofit. I thought it would be the best use of my time to try and raise money for a local nonprofit that helps put on this race so that others after me can also enjoy the experience, right? And can also breathe and live the Mongolian culture, which is just so unique and so revered in the horse culture and horse world, right? So Step and Hoof, the herders, their horses and their families, they're one of the integral parts of the Mongol Derby. Without them, like I said, this race would not work. And in today's Mongolia, and Enrique, thanks for kind of teeing this up without knowing, but in today's Mongolia, only approximately 700,000 nomadic herders remain out of a total population of 3 million. So less than 1/3 of the entire Mongolian population is nomadic, when in the past that number has been like about half. Climate change and urbanization are contributing to the rapid disappearance of one of the world's last traditional horse cultures. And without Step and Hoof stepping in, no pun intended, it's hard for Mongolian herders to depend solely on their animal herds for their existence. And so I am raising money to support the Step and Hoof organization, and I have created a GoFundMe and opportunities to kind of receive something back, right? Like I said, I don't want to ask for favors. I want to add value. So when you donate $18, in exchange, I'll send you a video of myself shouting you out or shouting someone out from the Mongol steppe. If you donate $100, for example, I'll send you back a framed photo from the Derby, either of me wearing the jersey or just like a cool picture of horses out there. So I'll make sure to share that with you, Enrique, but that's absolutely the best way to support me. And, follow me on Instagram, follow the Mongol Derby on Instagram. Those are really good ways. Or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll be posting about it on LinkedIn as well. And we'll be posting all these resources there anyway. So that's definitely the best way to reach out and to support. So that, and of course, join the Outlier Project. And that is also a really good way to support. The more folks we can get to join the Outlier Project, the more support I receive, right? The Outlier Project being the sponsor is something that means so much to me, and I'm really grateful and feel blessed to have. So want to give back as much as I can to Scott and the Outlier Project, and give them a little bit of all the support they're giving me.
Outstanding. Well, folks, we're gonna put all that info between Gideon and I in the comments so that you can have something to click on and go. We know how effective and efficient that will be. But we'll put all that in there post this show so that you can not only support Gideon, but also be part of other things that are happening. Gideon, thank you so much for sharing not only your life's journey, but this journey that you're about to embark on. We are full on behind you. And if there are companies out there, you specialize in athletic dietary type of stuff, you got granola bars, you got dry fruit, and you would like to help Gideon on this journey, I'm going to be tagging a whole bunch of them on this show so that they can get involved. But Gideon, we wish you all the best. We know that this is not going to be something easy. You mentioned not everybody makes it. And then by the way, you got a time limit, right? So you may make it all the way and still not make it.
Yeah,
so right. We're rooting for you. We know that you have quite a challenge ahead of you, but with the support that you need, you can definitely make it and succeed. And we're looking for that. Folks, we thank you all for being with us on this second doubleheader of Aloha Friday Live. Usually this does not happen, but we thought it was important to cover today. Gideon, thank you. Thank you to the Outlier Project. thank you to Parade Deck for hosting us and putting out our video, our live stream. We are on the hunt for 700 subscribers on DTLW Podcast. So if you go to YouTube at DTLW Podcast, you'll see our podcast there, and you're just welcome to hit that subscribe button. It's not going to hurt you, folks, but it will definitely help us. And what happens? Every 100 subscribers, we give a leadership, an author-signed leadership book. We give it away to one of the subscribers randomly selected, and they get it in the mail. Not only do we get our guest book out, but we also get a guest to learn a little bit more about leadership from that angle. Our next book is Identity Shift by Anthony Trucks. You will love this book. And if you don't know Anthony Trucks, shame on you. Go look him up on LinkedIn. You will love him. I know I do. So that book is next on the chopping block. As soon as we get to 700, we are about 653 or so last I checked. So only about 47 more will get us to that milestone, and we would love your support. And obviously Parade Deck streaming us live. Thank you. Parade Deck is a veteran, military and military spouse, first responder type of creator platform. They host all of these shows. They host our podcast, and they are doing some great things in the military community. Thank you, Parade Deck, for hosting us. Folks, that is all for us today. We are so grateful to have you with us today. All those viewing on LinkedIn, Facebook, Parade Deck, and YouTube. Thank you. Aloha Friday. Mahalo, everybody.
Thanks, and gig 'em.
Hey, gig 'em. And we hope that you have a safe weekend. And don't forget to remember, Monday, yes, you will be barbecuing, you will be sharing time with family, but it is a solemn day to remember those that gave their life through their military service, and we honor all those that have fallen and their families as well. So enjoy Memorial Day, but also remember why we're taking that day off as a holiday. Mahalo, everybody.
Mahalo. Thank you, Enrique.